the article, I've had some lawyers, some contacts since the Judge Malloy's decisions in Montana, and I wasn't involved in any of that stuff anyway from Sunday on it, tell me that they just read this stuff in '93 and they thought I wrote it yesterday. Then in 1996, I published a longer monograph on wolf recovery, basically wolf recovery, political ecology, and endangered species. And unlike everyone else, any other ecologist, as Steve mentioned, I accurately predicted the mess we would be in today. Basically, I'm the only ecologist in the country that got it right. And he read that quote from Val Geist, which is sort of personal emails, but you know, from the very start, I learned never to put anything in an email you didn't expect the whole world to read, okay? Because even if you marked it confidential, do not forward, man. You know, you can't trust your friends sometimes. But I would say a thing about Val Geist. Val Geist is a true scientist in the fact that you can have a rational debate with him and talk just about data and not politics or values. And he understands science, he understands what data is, and he'll change his position if the data does not support his position. And that's what Val did, and he learned the hard way, when he moved out to Vancouver Island to retire and to live out there in the country and hunt deer and have deer and elk on his property and stuff, and then the wolves moved in. And then Val learned the hard way, just like you've learned the hard way here in Salmon, and other people have in Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming for the last 3 years. Okay, since then I've written a number of popular articles on wolves and predation. Today I only have time for short summary statements, but if you'll send me an email, I will be happy to send you e-copies, PDF files of all these publications, and I should say that Steve Alders put them on the Idaho for Wildlife website. So if you go to that website, you can find copies of all these publications. And I'll just read the titles of them. One is Predation, Lies, Myths, and Scientific Fraud. I named names of how we went from our grandfather's view of what wolves were to the present view of what wolves were. This all occurred in the late 60s and 70s. I named names who told lies and committed scientific fraud. No one sued me yet, so you know I must be right. I can't sue you for libel unless you're stupid, you know, if you get it right. Another article was on our predators killing your hunting opportunities, and these are published, and I don't need to go into all detail, you can hear too much. They're published either in Muley Crazy, which is Ryan Hatch's commercial publication. If it's too politically, and if it's not politically upsetting, to Miles Reddy, who's the head of the CEO, who used to work for DWR, our Division of Wildlife Resource, who I beat as a drum under private contract, which is another story. He'll put some stuff in the Mule Deer Foundation magazine. So things like the Evil's Opinion Juniper that we're not talking about today, that was published in the Mule Deer Foundation. Aspen, a Vanishing Resource, the Forest Health Crisis, Where Have All the Flowers Gone, and other things that apply to mule deer were published in the MDF publication, and then most of this predator stuff, which has political implications, and the Mule Deer Foundation, just like the Elk Foundation up until recent time, you know, doesn't want to, you know, upset apple cartons and stuff on it like this kind of stuff. And so then high cost predation, wolf recovery is the listing rig, wolf predation, more bad news, the Kaibab deer incident. This is a specific incident that's very important in the history of wildlife management, and it all hinges around predation and reinterpretations of predators. And then predator-mediated competition, who I'll talk about later in my presentation here. And predation and the ecology of fear that Steve already mentioned a little bit. And then I have a number of things that are in press here. Is competitors always kill the weak and the sick or the infirm? That one's in press. And I have one on Keystone Basin Trophy Cascade that's in press. And I have one on man-eating wolves. These will be out in the next year. Most of these are so politically hot that Ron Hatch will publish them in his Muley Crazy magazine. And then I just finished a two-part article on wolf delisting, the legal battle, where I explain in detail all the important points of the delisting battle. This is the two-part thing. The first part's been out for 2 months. The second part is probably in the mail right now. And once these are all out and published, I'll have PDF files made, send them to Steve, and Steve will put them on the Idaho for Wildlife website. Because I don't have a blog or anything. I don't have time to do this. I just read the emails that people send me. Okay, one of the questions on everyone's mind is, do wolves and other predators limit the number of game animals? Okay? And the answer is absolutely. As I noted back in 1993, wolves and other predators routinely keep ungulated populations at 10% or less of what the habitat would normally support without the predators there. And it's important to remember, and I've said this back in 93 and 96, it's just not a matter of wolves. It's wolves on top of grizzly bear predation. In certain situations in Alaska where they've done these scientific studies, in certain places where the bears, there's large numbers of bears being fueled by salmon and berries, the main predators on moose calves winds up, and on moose population winds up being grizzly bears, not so much wolves on this kind of thing. But it's grizzly bear, it's wolf predation, on top of grizzly bear predation, on top of black bear predation. In some cases, black bears have been shown to be a very key predator, and the bears are mainly on the young for the first month on this kind of stuff. Because people tell you, Walt Disney tells you, and your game browsers will probably tell you, because that's what they were taught, which is not true, is that these young animals, the deer and elk, don't have any scent. Well, bears can find them. I mean, I've seen videos, you probably have too, of grizzly bears hunting elk calves in Yellowstone, where they just systematically grid the country until they pick up a scent and then shoot right to the calf. And of course, it's dinner, lunch, or what you call it. And then, of course, it's on top of mountain lion predation. And it's amazing the pictures, it's hard to see this, you can sort of see it somewhat. It's amazing the pictures you see nowadays because everybody has these digital things in cell phone camera. So this is one that came across my computer. What it shows, you can see how deep the snow is. It's a 6-point bull elk. This is a mountain lion taking down that 6-point bull elk that someone just happened to come across when it was actually in the process of predation. So it's important to remember it's not just wolves per se, it's wolves on top of all these other species. And this predation is what's called additive, okay? Because the wolves kill one more. Oh, they just moved these about the world. Because the wolves kill one more doesn't mean mountain lions kill one less. So that's what additive means. However, in the majority of cases, and especially here, with these introduced wolves, wolves are the major predator and the major concern because they have the highest rate of increase. I mean, bears have a relatively slow rate of increase, grizzly bears do. And mountain lions have a higher rate of increase than bears do on it. And of course, wolves have a higher rate of increase yet. Wolves actually have a higher rate of increase, potential increase, than ungulates. A great deal of research on wolves has been done in the Canadian Rockies, and Steve mentioned Cliff White, who's a friend of mine now. Unlike our Park Service that wish I'd fall off the end of the earth, the President of the United States and all sorts of other people have done everything to suppress my views on Yellowstone and my research in Yellowstone. Parks Canada sole source contracts to me. I did this long report, about 600 pages, on long-term ecosystem states and processes in the Canadian Rockies, where I summarize all the first-person historical accounts, all the fire history data, all the repeat photo data, all the archaeological data, okay? Get some idea of what was here in the past and how these systems might have functioned in the past. And so Cliff, at the time, he had very good position, but he was basically running the ecological research in Banff, and you can't see this on it because this is a very bad venue. And I have to say this is the first time I've ever given a talk in a barn. I actually gave my first talk in a Barville, and it was actually in Utah, of all places, and it was the Society of American Foresters meeting. And I spoke to all the regional forest supervisors in the entire Intermountain West, and my talk was on Aboriginal influence in the original state of nature. What this just shows you is the Bow Valley, and the way the Bow Valley sits up in Canada. And if you've never been there, the Canadians have done their parks differently than we do. So there's a park of Banff, there's actually a town of Banff in the park. Okay, and I forget, it's like 5,000 or 6,000 people or whatever it is, and they have X thousands of hotel rooms and stuff on this thing. So that sits right in the park, and that will become important here as we discuss it. Well, luckily you can see this. I didn't put this together. This is Cliff White put this together because he, like I, were invited to speak here in February at the Society of Range Management. Their national meeting was in Billings last spring in February, and they had a symposium on wolves, a scientific symposium, and we all had 25 minutes. So the wolves naturally recolonized the southern Canadian Rockies in the late 1980s. In the 50s, they wiped out their wolves just like we did here with poison and everything because it was a rabies scare. But they didn't worry about the far north because there's not enough people that live up there. And so naturally, starting in the late 70s, the wolves naturally recolonized Jasper National Park, which is north of Banff, and then they naturally recolonized Banff starting in the late 80s. So this follows the number of elk up here. What's important is to watch these red dots. So this is a town site right here. So when the wolves were just getting started, there was only one pack that had only been there for a year. This was the distribution of elk. And the larger the dots, the more elk. So this is the number of elk they would count when they do their winter flight. It was between 800 and 1,000 elk. This is the park boundary here. There's a town outside it, adjacent to it, called Canmore. And you can see the elk do not go outside the park on it, so there's no influence of hunting here. So part of the reason I use this park as an example, and you'll see in Yellowstone, Central Yellowstone as an example, there's no confounding influences here. So you can't blame the decline on the elk population on hunters because they're not being hunted. Okay? On this kind of stuff. And so that's 1990. This is 1995. Note where you have the elk are concentrating in the town on this stuff on it, plus the numbers are dropping. Okay? This is in 2000. And this is in 2005. This is down here. There was less than 200 elk on this, and so this is where the elk are left. Okay. Basically, the vast majority of elk that are left live in the town now year-round, 24/7, 365. They no longer migrate to the high elevation summer ranges. The habitat's still there. It hasn't changed as a national park, okay? But the elk are no longer using it because this is full of grizzly bears, full of mountain lions, and full of wolves. And you can see this in this next slide here, which again is from Cliff's presentation. This is when they had radio-collared elk between 97 and 99. The red dots here are the wolf pack that was to the west of the town. The blue things are basically elk. Okay, there's a few here. Then the green wolves over here is a pack that once they figured out how to get around the town, there was 2 wolf packs in it. And all the elk were right there in town. And of course, this presented a public safety issue because the elk were calving in town and they were injuring people. It wasn't so much the bulls during the rut, it was the cows, and they weren't killing tourists. They almost killed some locals because it's one lady in particular that started off all the research and all the whole revamping of park policy. She was just out jogging on a Sunday morning. She didn't realize that 10 minutes before she jogged on this trail, she'd been jogging on all her life because she's a full-time resident in Banff, that this cow elk just had a calf right on the trail. And the elk came down and stomped her. And some lady in the house that was visiting saw this happen. Well, Canada has had budget cuts at that time, just like we had. So there was no wardens on duty on Sunday morning early, and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police weren't on duty either. So it took an hour for someone to get up there and try to control this elk. And every time the woman would try to get up, elk would just stomp her into the ground and almost killed her. So that's what set off this whole massive research program, and why I got to do research up there, and they revised their whole policy and did all sorts of other stuff.